Rizal, fresh from Ateneo de Manila University, enters the University of Santo Tomas. But he didn't know what course to take. His Jesuit mentors tell him to either take priesthood or farming, but Rizal wanted to take either literature, medicine, or law. Pasiano didn't want him to take law due to political conditions of the country. He then decides to take philosophy and letters. It was what his father wanted for him. After his first year, he shifted to medicine. Reasons being Father Ramon advised him to, and he wanted to cure his mother's ailment. Rizal didn't do well in UST. It was noticeable that Rizal was meant for the arts, not for medicine. There were three factors that could potentially explain his below-standard academic performance. 1. Medicine wasn't his real vocation. Second, was the Dominican system of education.
El esqueleto actúa como ligadura de los músculos. Asimismo, protege los órganos vitales como cualquier imbécil puede responder la pregunta.
And third, there were so many distractions. Rizal fell in love with Segunda Katigbak. He wanted to marry her, but it didn't work out. Then came Orang Valenzuela and Leonor Rivera, with whom he had romantic relationships with. The relationship with Orang Valenzuela also didn't work out. So then there was Leonor Rivera, who was also his cousin. Liberalism and Filipino students at UST. Rizal and his colleagues talk about liberal ideas as the country was being open to more knowledge and ideas. They talk about the revolution of the senses against the otherworldliness of monasticism, talked about the revolution of human reason against the comforting certitudes of catechism, and discussed about the revolution of race and nation against inequality and subjugation. There is an organization of art lovers in the Philippines. They conduct regular competitions in literary writings. They are called the Liceo Artístico Literario de Manila. Here are some of Rizal's important literary works. A la Juventud Filipina, to the Filipino youth. El Consejo de los Dioses, the Council of the Gods. E Filipinas, and Junto al Pasig, beside the Pasig. He joins these contests to prove that Filipinos can equal or even surpass the Spaniards in terms of literary works. A la Juventud Filipina won grand prize. It was a great poem in Spanish written by a Filipino recognized by Spanish authorities. It was the first impressions of nationalistic concept that the Filipinos were the fair hope of the motherland. It was Rizal's first testimony of his nationalism. In the poem, the one he addressed motherland was really the Philippines. The Spaniards thought he meant Spain. Rizal was the first to call the Philippines his motherland. He also called the youth the fair hope of the motherland. Rizal said that they could cultivate their talents in arts and look forward and break their chains of bondage. In the 1880 literary contest, El Consejo de los Dioses was judged as the best entry. But when the Spaniards knew the writer was Filipino, they disregarded the entry and made a Spaniard win. Although Rizal didn't win, he proved that the Filipinos can compete with other races in a fair play. Junto al Pasig was made for a one-act play to be staged at Ateneo for the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. The play could be interpreted as a prophecy of 50 years' revolution, an appeal to the youth to stop Spaniards from causing the people misery, or pure religious allegory because in the play, a choir of angels successfully drives Satan and his devils out of the land. A Filipinas, a sonnet in 1880.
Beautiful and ardent as the nymph from heaven, pure and gracious as the nascent dawn, when the clouds of sapphire glow, the goddess of Indian soil slumbers. The light foam of the sonorous sea kisses her feet with loving desire.
It was to encourage Filipino artists to glorify the country through their artworks. Student activism.
Entre sus estaturas ¿Acaso este indio tiene menos huesos que Fernando?
Esto quiere decir que somos superiores a los Filipinos.
Hostility starts between the Filipino students and the Spanish mestizo students. Filipinos were called Indio or Chogo, and the Spanish were called Castilla or Bangus. Sometimes, students also fought in the streets.
Diyan na mga bangus na yan! Pabayaan mo sila! Bonos! Ilano!
Rizal, who also knows fencing and wrestling, was the leader of the Filipino students.
Habron! Oto!
He was wounded at the fight in Escolta, Manila. Rizal, with Galasiano Apacible as his secretary, formed a secret society of Filipino students united and called themselves Comparenismo.
Sino ka?
Ako'y sugo ni Elisha.
At sino ang haring laging pupurihin ng mga anak ni Isaac?
Jehu.
Ikaw ba'y propeta o disipulo?
Propeta.
Kompanyerismo. Pagkakapatiran. Ito ang prinsipyong mag-uugnay sa ating lahat.
Rizal criticized boldly the defective and outmoded university education of his time. Humiliating treatment of brown Filipino students insulted by Dominican mentors. Condemned the archaic method of instruction at UST. Described comically the teachings of physics devoid of lab experiments. Filipino students couldn't even touch the lab experiments. Favoritism and skin color were the criteria of judgment of academic performance instead of intellectual brilliance. Rizal had his first taste of brutality after his first semester at UST. While walking down the street at night, he bumps into a man who he fails to realize as a lieutenant of the Guardia Civil. The lieutenant was offended that he wasn't greeted, so he slashed Rizal's back with his sword. Rizal was wounded. He sent a complaint letter to Gobernador General Primo de Rivera. But nothing positive came out of his complaint. They thought he was an Indio. This left a deep impression on Rizal. He realized that as an Indio, he would not be regarded equally with a Spaniard by a bar of justice. His demand for equality is then started. Rizal decides to go to Barcelona after finishing his 4th year in the medical course. This was partly because of his disappointment with his schooling at UST, but this was not his real reason for his sudden departure. A letter from Pasiano to Rizal implies a hidden purpose for his voyage to the New World. The main purpose of your going is not to improve yourself in the profession, but in other more useful things, or what comes to the same thing, that to which you have greater inclination. Hidden real purposes of Rizal's voyage to Europe: to make a name for himself in the realm of journalism, to observe and study European society, to prepare himself for the task of liberating Filipinos from Spanish tyranny,